the first rays of sunlight slowly rise above the gentle hills of Tuscany, bathing endless vineyards and ancient stone villages in a warm golden glow. Morning mist drifts across the valley as birds welcome another peaceful day in Renaissance Italy. The camera glides over winding country roads before arriving at the quiet town of Vinci, a place that appears ordinary, yet gave birth to one of the most extraordinary minds humanity has ever known. Hello my friends, and welcome back to Chill and Feel Chronicles. Whether you're relaxing after a long day, enjoying a quiet morning, or preparing to drift off to sleep, I'm truly grateful you're here. Before we begin, I'd love to know where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it where you are right now. Share it in the comments, so we can see history bringing people together from every corner of the globe. And if you enjoy peaceful journeys through history filled with mystery, breathtaking stories, and remarkable people, please take a moment to subscribe. Every subscription helps this channel continue uncovering the world's greatest forgotten stories, one chapter at a time. Now, imagine living in a world without airplanes, without electricity, without engines, without modern science. Then imagine a man quietly sketching a flying machine that looked astonishingly similar to a helicopter, more than 400 years before the first successful flight. What if one man imagined helicopters 400 years before they existed? What if the world's greatest painter was also one of history's greatest scientists? How could a single mind change art, engineering, anatomy, architecture, and even the future itself? Some people master a single craft in their lifetime. Others leave behind one great achievement. But once in many centuries, someone appears whose curiosity knows no limits, someone who refuses to accept that anything is impossible. That person was Leonardo da Vinci. To many, he is simply the painter of the mysterious Mona Lisa. But behind that famous smile stood an extraordinary mind that dissected human bodies to understand life itself, designed bridges that were centuries ahead of their time, imagined armored vehicles, flying machines, diving suits, robots, and countless inventions long before technology could bring them to life. His notebooks contained thousands of sketches and ideas that the world would not fully understand for hundreds of years. Was he merely a genius? Or was he a man born far ahead of his own time? Tonight, we journey into the life of the ultimate Renaissance mind, a man whose endless curiosity transformed art, science, engineering, and human imagination forever. This is the story of Leonardo da Vinci, the genius beyond imagination. Long before the masterpieces, before the notebooks filled with impossible machines, before kings sought his advice and generations called him a genius, there was only a small boy wandering through the quiet countryside of Tuscany. The story of Leonardo da Vinci begins not in a grand palace or a wealthy city, but in the peaceful village of Vinci, nestled among the rolling hills of central Italy. It was here, on the 15th of April, 1452, that one of history's most extraordinary minds entered the world. The Italy into which Leonardo was born was very different from the nation we know today. Instead of one united country, the Italian peninsula was divided into powerful city-states, each competing for wealth, influence, and artistic achievement. Florence was becoming the heart of the Renaissance, where new ideas about science, philosophy, and art were beginning to flourish. Yet none of that mattered to the newborn child resting quietly in the countryside. His first world was not one of politics or ambition. It was the sound of birds greeting the morning, the gentle movement of streams winding through green valleys, the rustling leaves of ancient olive trees dancing in the breeze. Leonardo was born to Ser Piero da Vinci, a respected Florentine notary, and Caterina, a young woman from the local countryside. His parents were never married, making Leonardo an illegitimate child, a status that carried significant social consequences during the 15th century. For many children, such circumstances might have become a lifelong burden. Ironically, for Leonardo, they became an unexpected gift. Because he was born outside the traditional expectations placed upon noble sons, he was not required to follow the strict path toward becoming a lawyer or public official like his father. The rules that shaped other young lives did not completely shape his. Without realizing it, fate had quietly left a different door open. Instead of spending every day buried beneath legal documents or endless lessons in Latin, Leonardo spent much of his childhood exploring fields, forests, rivers, and rocky hillsides. Nature became his first classroom. Every walk revealed another mystery waiting to be understood. Why did birds glide effortlessly without falling? Why did tree branches always grow toward the light? Why did water twist into spirals as it flowed around stones? Why could some insects walk across the surface of a pond without sinking? While many children simply accepted the world as it appeared, Leonardo questioned everything. He did not merely look. He observed. He did not simply admire beauty. He searched for the invisible rules hidden beneath it. Hours could disappear as he watched hawks circling high above the valleys, carefully studying the movement of their wings. He examined wildflowers with remarkable patience, noticing how each petal unfolded with mathematical precision. He collected unusual rocks, leaves, shells, and animal bones, fascinated by the patterns that repeated themselves throughout nature. To Leonardo, nothing was ordinary. Every feather held a lesson. Every flowing stream concealed a secret. Every creature offered a clue about how the universe worked. These quiet moments beneath the Tuscan sky were shaping a mind unlike any other. Centuries later, scientists would marvel at how accurately Leonardo understood the movement of water, the structure of plants, and the mechanics of flight. But those discoveries did not begin inside a laboratory. They began here, with muddy shoes, curious eyes, and endless questions. The adults around him may have seen only a bright and energetic child wandering through fields. They could not have imagined that every observation was becoming part of an invisible library inside his mind. The curves of leaves would one day influence his paintings. The muscles of horses would inspire anatomical studies. The flight of birds would lead him to dream of machines capable of carrying humans into the sky. For Leonardo, the boundaries between art and science did not exist. A bird was both beautiful and mechanical. A river was both peaceful and mathematical. A tree was both living and architectural. Everything in nature was connected. Everything had a purpose. Everything deserved to be understood. In the quiet hills surrounding Vinci, long before the world knew his name, the greatest genius of the Renaissance was already asking questions that humanity itself had barely begun to consider. The child born outside society's rules was slowly learning another truth, that the greatest discoveries often belong to those who never stop wondering why. As Leonardo grew from a curious child into a thoughtful young man, it became increasingly clear that the quiet hills of Vinci could no longer contain his remarkable potential. His endless sketches, keen observations, and natural talent hinted at something extraordinary. Around the age of 14, his father made a decision that would forever change the course of history. Leonardo would leave the peaceful countryside behind and travel to Florence. In the 15th century, Florence was unlike any other city in Europe. Wealth flowed through its busy streets, carried by merchants, bankers, and skilled craftsmen. Towering churches reached toward the sky, while magnificent palaces displayed the growing influence of powerful families. Everywhere one looked, artists, Architects, engineers, philosophers, and scholars exchanged ideas that were reshaping the world. This was the beating heart of the Renaissance. For a young man hungry to understand everything around him, there could have been no better place to learn. Leonardo was accepted into the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, one of Florence's most respected masters. Verrocchio was far more than a painter. He was a sculptor, goldsmith, engineer, architect, and inventor whose workshop functioned as one of the greatest creative schools of the age. To enter his studio was not simply to learn how to paint, it was to learn how to think. Each day began before sunrise. Apprentices swept the floors, prepared wooden panels, mixed pigments from crushed minerals, ground precious stones into brilliant colors, stretched canvas, melted metals, carved marble, and sharpened countless tools. Nothing was considered too small or too ordinary. Every task taught discipline. Every mistake became a lesson. Leonardo absorbed knowledge with astonishing speed. He studied painting, learning how light gently wrapped around the human face and how shadows created the illusion of depth. He practiced sculpture, discovering how emotion could emerge from cold blocks of stone. He learned metallurgy, watching molten bronze glow like liquid sunlight before taking solid form. Architecture revealed the hidden mathematics behind beautiful buildings. Mechanical engineering introduced him to gears, pulleys, levers, and machines that transformed simple human effort into incredible power. Even anatomy became part of his education, as artists sought to understand muscles and movement in order to portray the human body with greater realism. Unlike many apprentices who focused on mastering a single craft, Leonardo refused to separate one discipline from another. To him, every subject was connected. A machine moved like a human arm. A cathedral stood because of the same principles that held together the branches of a tree. The muscles beneath the skin explained both movement and beauty. The more he learned, the more questions appeared. Verrocchio quickly noticed that his young apprentice possessed an unusual gift. Leonardo rarely copied what he saw exactly as it appeared. Instead, he searched for the hidden laws beneath every object. He wanted to know why light reflected differently on polished metal than on flowing water, why expressions changed with the smallest movement of a muscle, why birds could soar effortlessly while humans remained bound to the earth. Curiosity drove him far beyond the expectations of an ordinary student. Then came the story that would become one of the most famous legends in the history of art. Verrocchio had been commissioned to paint the baptism of Christ. As was common in Renaissance workshops, apprentices assisted their master by painting smaller sections of the composition. Leonardo was assigned the task of painting one of the angels. Working with extraordinary patience, the young apprentice carefully layered delicate colors, softened every transition of light, and gave the angel a natural grace unlike anything commonly seen at the time. The figure seemed alive. The flowing hair shimmered gently, the skin appeared warm, and the expression carried a quiet humanity that captivated anyone who looked upon it. When the painting was finished, the contrast was impossible to ignore. Leonardo's angel appeared softer, more lifelike, and more emotionally expressive than the surrounding figures. According to a story repeated for centuries, Verrocchio was so astonished by the brilliance of his apprentice's work that he vowed never to paint again, believing his student had already surpassed him. Whether this tale is entirely true or embellished through generations of admiration, one thing is certain: a new artistic voice had emerged in Florence. People began to notice the gifted young apprentice whose vision seemed different from everyone else's. But Leonardo himself was not interested in fame. For him, every completed painting simply led to another question. Every finished sculpture inspired another experiment. Every success opened another door waiting to be explored. Inside Verrocchio's bustling workshop, surrounded by brushes, marble, bronze, gears, and endless ideas, Leonardo da Vinci was becoming something the world had never seen before. Not merely an artist, not merely an engineer, but a mind determined to understand every corner of creation. By the time Leonardo reached adulthood, it had become clear that he was unlike any ordinary artist. Most painters devoted themselves to color and composition. Sculptors perfected the human form. Architects designed buildings. Engineers built machines. Each profession followed its own path, separated by invisible boundaries that few dared to cross. Leonardo saw no boundaries at all. To him, knowledge was not divided into separate subjects. Everything belonged to the same magnificent puzzle. The movement of a bird's wing could explain the design of a flying machine. The muscles beneath a smile could improve a portrait. The flow of water through a river could reveal the forces shaping the entire earth. The spiral of a seashell echoed the same geometry found in galaxies, flowers, and storms. Where others saw isolated facts, Leonardo saw connections, and that simple difference changed history. Curiosity became the force that guided every hour of his life. He was famous for asking questions that few people had ever considered. Why is the sky blue? Why do shadows become softer as daylight fades? How does the human eye transform light into vision? Why do birds glide without constantly flapping their wings? What causes whirlpools to spin? How does a seed know how to become a tree? He rarely accepted easy answers. If someone claimed that something worked a certain way simply because tradition said so, Leonardo remained unconvinced. He wanted proof. He wanted observation. He wanted to see nature reveal its own secrets. This relentless curiosity became his greatest teacher. Wherever Leonardo traveled, one object almost never left his side: a notebook, or rather many notebooks. Small enough to carry beneath his arm or tuck into his clothing, they accompanied him through workshops, markets, tourists, royal courts, and quiet walks through the countryside. Whenever an idea appeared, he captured it before it could disappear. A strange cloud formation, the shape of a leaf, the muscles of a horse, the design of a bridge, the smile of a stranger, the flight of an eagle. Nothing was too small, nothing was too ordinary. His notebooks became an extension of his mind. Over the course of his life, Leonardo filled thousands upon thousands of pages with sketches, observations, diagrams, calculations, inventions, philosophical reflections, and questions still waiting for answers. Some pages contained breathtaking anatomical drawings. Others showed detailed studies of flowing water. One page might display the gears of an elaborate machine. The next might hold the delicate petals of a flower. Another would suddenly shift to architectural plans for a magnificent city. Reading through his notebooks today feels less like opening the journal of a single individual, and more like stepping inside an entire universe of ideas. Yet perhaps their most curious feature is not what Leonardo wrote, it is how he wrote. Much of his writing appears backward. The letters flow from right to left, readable only when reflected in a mirror. This unusual style, often called mirror writing, has fascinated historians for centuries. Some have suggested that Leonardo wished to protect his ideas from curious eyes. Others believe it simply suited him better because he was left-handed, allowing him to write without smudging fresh ink across the page. Whatever the reason, the mirrored words added another layer of mystery to an already extraordinary mind. But the true secret of Leonardo's genius was not hidden inside backward handwriting. It lay within the remarkable way he thought. For Leonardo, art and science were never rivals. They were partners. To paint the human body beautifully, he first needed to understand its muscles, bones, tendons, and proportions. To design a flying machine, he carefully studied birds rather than relying on imagination alone. To build stronger bridges, he observed the strength of tree branches. To understand rivers, he watched water flowing over rocks for countless hours. Every scientific discovery improved his art. Every artistic observation inspired new scientific questions. He refused to separate beauty from truth. Instead, he believed that nature itself was the greatest teacher. If one learned to observe carefully enough, every answer already existed within the world. This philosophy demanded extraordinary patience. Leonardo could spend hours watching ripples spread across a pond. He carefully traced the changing expressions on a person's face. He examined the twisting roots of ancient trees. He watched smoke rise into the air, fascinated by the invisible currents shaping its graceful movements. To many people, these moments appeared quiet and uneventful. To Leonardo, they were experiments. Every observation added another piece to an ever-growing picture of how creation worked. His mind never truly rested. One question inevitably led to another. One discovery revealed 10 new mysteries. The deeper he looked, the more he realized how much remained unknown. Perhaps that is why so many of his projects remained unfinished. Leonardo was not distracted because he lacked discipline. He was driven forward by a curiosity too vast to be satisfied. Each answer became the beginning of another journey. Centuries later, scholars would call him the ultimate Renaissance man. Artists admired his imagination. Scientists praised his observations. Engineers studied his designs. Doctors marveled at his anatomical drawings. Inventors found inspiration in sketches created hundreds of years before modern technology existed. Yet Leonardo himself sought neither titles nor perfection. He sought understanding. In a world where most people spent their lives mastering a single craft, Leonardo dared to ask whether all knowledge was connected. That simple belief transformed an exceptionally talented young artist into something far rarer. A thinker without limits. A student of nature. A dreamer whose notebook became one of humanity's greatest treasures, and whose endless curiosity continues to inspire the world more than 5 centuries later. By the early 1870s of the 15th century, Leonardo da Vinci had already earned a reputation as a gifted young artist in Florence. His paintings revealed remarkable sensitivity. His sketches displayed astonishing precision. His imagination seemed limitless. Yet Leonardo felt that Florence, for all its beauty and brilliance, could no longer satisfy the growing ambitions of his restless mind. He wanted more than commissions for portraits and religious paintings. He wanted to build. He wanted to invent. He wanted to solve problems that had never been solved before. Above all, he longed for a place where every part of his extraordinary talent could flourish. That opportunity appeared in the powerful city of Milan. At the time, Milan was one of the wealthiest and most influential states in Italy. Unlike Florence, whose identity centered on banking, commerce, and artistic patronage, Milan was a city of fortifications, industry, engineering, and military power. Its ruler, Duke Ludovico Sforza, dreamed of transforming Milan into the greatest court in Europe. He needed architects. He needed engineers. He needed brilliant minds capable of turning impossible ideas into reality. Leonardo believed he was exactly the man for the task. But instead of arriving with paintings tucked beneath his arm, he chose a far more surprising approach. He wrote what has become one of the most famous job applications in history. Reading the letter today is almost astonishing. One might expect the young Leonardo to begin by celebrating his artistic achievements. After all, he had already trained under Andrea del Verrocchio and possessed exceptional talent with brush and pencil. Instead, he barely mentioned painting at all. Line after line, Leonardo introduced himself as something entirely different. He described his ability to design lightweight yet incredibly strong bridges that could be assembled quickly during military campaigns. He explained how he could construct machines capable of removing water from deep trenches and rivers. He offered designs for powerful cannons that were lighter, more efficient, and easier to transport than existing artillery. He promised armored vehicles that could protect soldiers while advancing across the battlefield. He proposed methods for breaching enemy fortifications without unnecessary destruction. He outlined ideas for tunnels, defensive systems, and mechanical devices unlike anything commonly seen in 15th century Europe. Every paragraph revealed another practical solution. Every sentence reflected confidence. This was not the voice of a painter seeking recognition. It was the voice of an engineer imagining the future. Leonardo also presented himself as an architect capable of designing elegant public buildings, magnificent palaces, and sophisticated systems for managing cities. He believed architecture should combine beauty with functionality. A building, in his mind, was not merely something pleasant to admire. It was a machine for human life. Its proportions, strength, light, airflow, and harmony all mattered equally. His understanding extended far beyond walls and roofs. He envisioned entire urban environments where engineering improved everyday living. The remarkable thing about Leonardo's letter was not simply the range of skills he claimed to possess. It was the way he viewed them as parts of one unified discipline. To design a bridge required mathematics. To construct a fortress demanded architecture. To invent machinery required observation of nature. To solve military problems required imagination. Everything was connected. Only at the very end of the letter, almost as an afterthought, did Leonardo add one final sentence. He quietly mentioned that, if needed, he could also create sculptures in marble or bronze, and he could paint as well as anyone. Today, that final statement almost makes us smile. The man who would later paint The Last Supper and the Mona Lisa works celebrated as among the greatest achievements in the history of art placed painting at the very bottom of his qualifications. To Leonardo, being an artist was never enough. He wanted to be recognized as a creator of ideas, a builder of the future. Whether Duke Ludovico fully understood the extraordinary mind behind the letter remains uncertain. What is certain is that Leonardo was welcomed into the Milanese court. His imagination finally found the freedom it had been searching for. His days quickly filled with ambitious projects. He designed elegant bridges capable of spanning difficult terrain, while remaining surprisingly lightweight. He experimented with new forms of artillery, seeking greater efficiency through improved engineering rather than sheer size. He filled pages with gears, pulleys, rotating mechanisms, cranes, lifting devices, machines intended to reduce human labor. Some ideas could be built using the technology of his own century. Others were far beyond what contemporary craftsmen could achieve. Yet Leonardo drew them anyway. He refused to let the limitations of his age restrict the possibilities of his imagination. Within his notebooks appeared giant crossbows, mechanical devices for moving enormous stones, hydraulic systems that controlled flowing water, sophisticated canal improvements, and machines capable of lifting tremendous weights. Many of these designs would never leave the page. But that hardly mattered. For Leonardo, every sketch represented another experiment, another question explored, another possibility preserved for the future. His work for Ludovico extended beyond engineering. The Duke frequently entrusted him with organizing elaborate festivals, theatrical performances, and royal celebrations. Leonardo designed moving stage scenery, ingenious mechanical effects, and breathtaking spectacles that amazed audiences. Even entertainment became an opportunity to combine mathematics, mechanics, architecture, light music, and artistic beauty into a single unforgettable experience. There seemed to be no boundary between invention and imagination, no separation between science and creativity. In Milan, Leonardo was no longer simply a promising apprentice from Florence. He had become a visionary trusted with projects that demanded both practical intelligence and limitless imagination. The city became his laboratory. Its workshops echoed with the sounds of metal being forged. Its canals inspired new hydraulic studies. Its castles challenged him to rethink architecture and defense. Every commission expanded his understanding of how human ingenuity could reshape the world. Looking back today, it is easy to remember Leonardo primarily as the painter of the Mona Lisa. Yet during these remarkable years in Milan, he saw himself differently. He believed his greatest contribution would come not from a canvas hanging on a wall, but from ideas capable of transforming cities, machines engineering, and the future itself. And although many of those dreams would remain unfinished, they revealed something even more extraordinary than technical brilliance. They revealed a man who believed that no problem was too complex, no invention too ambitious, and no dream beyond the reach of human curiosity. The year was around 1495. Leonardo da Vinci had now spent many years in the service of Duke Ludovico Sforza, earning admiration not only as an engineer and inventor, but also as an artist of remarkable imagination. Then came the commission that would define his legacy for centuries. Inside the Dominican monastery of Santa Maria Grossi in Milan stood a quiet dining hall, where monks gathered each day for their meals. One of its long walls awaited decoration, and Leonardo was entrusted with creating a scene worthy of both the monastery and the Duke's ambitions. The subject was familiar: the final meal shared by Jesus Christ and his 12 apostles before the crucifixion. Many artists had painted the Last Supper before. Most arranged the apostles calmly along one side of a table, each figure appearing solemn and orderly. Leonardo envisioned something entirely different. He did not want to paint a meal. He wanted to capture a single heartbeat in history, one unforgettable moment. The instant after Jesus quietly speaks the words, "One of you will betray me." Everything changes in that fraction of a second. Silence breaks. Shock spreads across the room. Questions race through every mind. Who? Could it be him? Could it be me? Leonardo believed that true painting was not simply about appearance. It was about revealing the invisible emotions hidden beneath the human face. For weeks and then months, he studied expressions wherever he went. He observed conversations in crowded markets. He watched merchants negotiating prices. He followed the faces of children laughing together. He examined soldiers, priests, laborers, noblemen, and strangers sitting quietly in taverns. Each smile, each glance, each raised eyebrow, each tightening muscle around the mouth. Everything became part of his research. Unlike many painters who worked steadily from sunrise until sunset, Leonardo often spent hours simply standing before the unfinished wall. Visitors sometimes believed he was doing nothing. In reality, his mind never stopped working. He imagined every gesture before allowing his brush to touch the plaster. When inspiration finally arrived, he painted with astonishing speed, bringing entire passages to life within a single day. Then he would disappear again into contemplation. To Leonardo, thinking was as important as painting. Perhaps the greatest innovation of the Last Supper lay in its extraordinary composition. Every architectural line inside the room, the ceiling beams, the walls, and the windows draws the viewer's eye toward one central figure, Jesus. Without shouting for attention, without dramatic movement, he becomes the calm center of a storm of emotion. Around him, the 12 apostles erupt into waves of disbelief. Some lean forward in confusion, others recoil in horror. Several begin questioning one another. Hands rise into the air. Voices seem almost audible despite the complete silence of the painting. Each apostle reacts differently. Each possesses a unique personality. Each expresses a different stage of shock, fear, denial, anger, or sorrow. No two faces tell exactly the same story. For perhaps the first time in Western art, a large group of figures behaved like real human beings, rather than symbolic religious characters. Leonardo had transformed sacred history into living drama. Even Judas, the betrayer, was portrayed with remarkable psychological complexity. Instead of isolating him awkwardly from the others, Leonardo placed him among the apostles. His body instinctively pulls backward. His face retreats into shadow. His hand tightens around the small bag of silver. The betrayal has not yet happened, but somehow the viewer already senses its unbearable weight. This subtle storytelling would influence generations of artists who followed. Leonardo also mastered perspective with breathtaking precision. The dining hall painted upon the wall appears to become an extension of the monastery's real dining room. The illusion is so convincing that architecture and painting seem to merge into one continuous space. The monks sharing their meals below could almost imagine themselves sitting only a few steps away from Christ and his disciples. Yet Leonardo's relentless desire for perfection also led him toward a costly mistake. Traditional fresco painting required artists to work quickly upon wet plaster. The pigments chemically bonded with the wall as the plaster dried, creating paintings capable of surviving for centuries. Leonardo disliked these limitations. He wanted more time, more control, more opportunities to refine delicate transitions of light and shadow. So he experimented. Instead of true fresco, he developed a mixed technique, using tempera and oil paints applied to dry plaster. At first the results were magnificent. The colors appeared richer, the details softer, the expressions more lifelike than anything fresco could easily achieve. But the wall beneath the paint could not properly support the new materials. Moisture slowly seeped through the surface. Within only a few decades, sections of the masterpiece began to crack, peel, and fade. Visitors were heartbroken. One of the greatest paintings ever created was already disappearing. Over the following centuries, wars, humidity, neglect, and even bombing during the Second World War threatened its survival. Generations of restorers fought patiently to preserve what remained, carefully uncovering fragments of Leonardo's original vision beneath layers of damage and misguided repairs. Although the painting we see today is no longer exactly as Leonardo left it, its power remains astonishing. Artists from every generation have studied its composition. Its perspective transformed Renaissance painting. Its emotional realism redefined religious art. Its storytelling changed how painters portrayed the human soul. Countless reproductions, reinterpretations, films, books, and exhibitions continue to draw inspiration from a work created more than 5 centuries ago. Ironically, Leonardo's greatest artistic triumph also became his most fragile masterpiece. Its surface may have faded. Its colors may have softened with time. Yet its influence has never diminished. Inside the quiet walls of Santa Maria del Grazie, Leonardo da Vinci proved that a painting could do far more than decorate a room. It could freeze a single moment forever. and allow every generation, centuries later, to feel as though they were standing at the table, witnessing history unfold with their own eyes. Among all the paintings ever created, among countless portraits of kings, queens, emperors, and heroes, one quiet face has captivated the imagination of humanity more than any other. She wears no crown. She holds no jewel. She performs no dramatic gesture. She simply sits, hands gently folded, looking toward us with an expression that has refused to surrender its secret for more than 500 years. This is Mona Lisa. Perhaps no work of art has been studied more intensely. Millions travel across the world each year simply to stand before her. Books have been written about her. Songs have celebrated her. Films have revolved around her mystery. Scientists have scanned her with advanced technology. Historians continue to debate her identity. Yet despite all this attention, one simple question remains unanswered. Why does this portrait possess such extraordinary power? At first glance, the painting appears surprisingly modest. There is no magnificent throne, no elaborate palace, no dazzling display of wealth. The woman sits against a dreamlike landscape of winding rivers, distant mountains, and hazy horizons that seem to belong more to imagination than reality. Nothing shouts for attention. Everything whispers, and perhaps that quiet confidence is the beginning of its magic. Leonardo never believed that great painting was about copying appearances. To him, reality was never composed of hard lines. Look carefully at the world around you. Where exactly does shadow end and light begin? Where does one color suddenly become another? Nature rarely draws sharp boundaries. Instead, everything flows gently into everything else. Leonardo sought to capture that softness through a revolutionary technique now known by its Italian name, sfumato. The word suggests something like smoke. Not because the painting appears cloudy, but because every transition is almost invisible. Edges dissolve, shadows breathe softly into light. The skin seems alive beneath the surface. Instead of outlining the face with clear lines, Leonardo built it from countless delicate layers of transparent paint. Each layer was astonishingly thin. Some were almost impossible to detect with the naked eye. Patiently, over months and years, he added one translucent veil after another until the portrait appeared to glow from within. The result was unlike anything the world had ever seen. The face did not appear painted. It appeared alive. Then there is the smile. Perhaps the most famous smile in human history. Is she happy, thoughtful, melancholy, amused? Or does the expression change every time we look? Many viewers have experienced something curious. When looking directly at her mouth, the smile seems faint, almost disappearing. Yet when focusing instead upon her eyes, the smile appears stronger, warmer, and more mysterious. Modern scientists believe this effect results from Leonardo's masterful understanding of human vision. Our central vision notices fine details. Our peripheral vision is more sensitive to soft shadows. Because the corners of Mona Lisa's mouth are painted with extraordinarily subtle transitions of light and darkness, our brains constantly reinterpret what we see. The smile never truly changes. We do. It is an illusion created not by trickery, but by profound knowledge of both art and perception. Her eyes produce another remarkable sensation. No matter where a visitor stands, left, right, near, or far away, it often feels as though she is quietly watching them. Of course, the painting itself does not move. The effect comes from Leonardo's careful understanding of perspective and the direct orientation of the sitter's face. Even so, the experience remains strangely personal. For countless visitors, Standing before Mona Lisa feels less like observing a portrait, and more like meeting another human being. Then comes the question that has fascinated generations. Who was she? The most widely accepted answer identifies her as Lisa Gherardini, the wife of a successful Florentine merchant named Francesco del Giocondo. This explanation is supported by historical documents, and remains the view held by most scholars today, yet certainty has never completely silenced speculation. Some have wondered whether Leonardo intentionally blended masculine and feminine features into the portrait to express a deeper idea about balance and harmony. Others have proposed that the painting contains hidden symbols waiting to be discovered. Still others have suggested that the face reflects Leonardo's own features, transformed into an imaginative self-portrait. Although little convincing evidence supports these more dramatic theories, they reveal something important. Mona Lisa invites imagination. Every generation sees something different. That may be her greatest mystery. Even the background raises questions. The winding roads never quite meet. The rivers seem to flow through impossible landscapes. Mountains dissolve into blue mist. Nature appears ancient, beautiful, and strangely timeless. Some art historians believe Leonardo intentionally created a landscape that exists nowhere on Earth. Instead of painting one location, he painted the feeling of nature itself. A world where humanity and the earth remain quietly connected. Perhaps the greatest mystery, however, is Leonardo himself. Why did he never deliver the portrait to the man who likely commissioned it? Why did he carry it with him for years, continuing to refine it long after other artists would have declared it complete? Many believe Leonardo never considered Mona Lisa finished. Like nature itself, perfection always remained just beyond reach. Every subtle adjustment suggested another improvement. Every layer inspired another possibility. The portrait became not simply a commission, but a lifelong experiment, a conversation between an artist and his own ideals. Centuries later, Mona Lisa survived theft, wars, political turmoil, and endless public fascination. She became more than a masterpiece. She became a symbol of artistic genius, of human curiosity, of beauty that cannot be fully explained. Today, visitors often spend only a few brief moments standing before the painting inside the Louvre. Cameras flash, crowds gather, voices whisper in dozens of languages. Yet despite the noise surrounding her, the woman in the portrait remains perfectly calm. Her smile never reveals everything. Her eyes never look away. She simply waits, inviting each new generation to ask the very same question that Leonardo himself may have hoped would never be answered. What, exactly, is she thinking? And perhaps that is the true brilliance of Mona Lisa. Leonardo did not paint a perfect face. He painted a perfect mystery, one that continues to conquer the world not through spectacle or grandeur, but through quiet uncertainty, leaving every viewer with the feeling that the portrait knows something they do not. For most artists of the Renaissance, the human body was something to be admired. For Leonardo da Vinci, it was something to be understood. He believed that no painter could truly capture life without first discovering how life was built. Why did a hand bend so naturally? How did muscles pull against bone? What allowed the heart to beat without pause for an entire lifetime? How could a tiny child grow within the darkness of the womb? These were not merely artistic questions, they were scientific mysteries. And Leonardo was determined to answer them himself. At a time when much of Europe still relied upon ancient medical texts written more than 1,000 years earlier, Leonardo chose a far more difficult path. He trusted observation over tradition. Instead of accepting what others believed, he wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. That decision led him into places few artists had ever entered: hospitals, monasteries, and silent rooms where the dead rested before burial. There, under the dim light of candles, Leonardo began one of the most extraordinary scientific investigations of the Renaissance. He dissected the human body. Historical evidence suggests that over the course of his life, Leonardo participated in more than 30 human dissections. For his time, this was an astonishing undertaking. Dissection was physically demanding, emotionally unsettling, and often surrounded by religious and social suspicion. There were no modern laboratories, no electric lights, no refrigeration. Every examination had to be completed quickly before natural decay made careful study impossible. The work required patience, precision, and extraordinary courage. Night after night, Leonardo carefully separated muscle from bone, traced the paths of nerves, examined delicate blood vessels, and measured the proportions of the human skeleton. He was not searching for curiosity alone. He was searching for understanding. Every structure had a purpose. Every tendon followed a pattern. Every joint revealed elegant mechanical design. The more deeply he explored the body, the more convinced he became that nature was the greatest engineer of all. His notebooks gradually filled with breathtaking anatomical illustrations unlike anything the world had ever seen. He drew the powerful muscles of the shoulder and arm with remarkable accuracy, showing how each one contracted to produce movement. He carefully illustrated the skeleton, revealing not merely individual bones but the relationships that allowed the body to stand, walk, and balance. His studies of the spine demonstrated an understanding that would not be fully appreciated for centuries. The human heart fascinated him perhaps more than any other organ. Many physicians of his era still repeated ideas inherited from ancient authorities without questioning them. Leonardo preferred to investigate for himself. He dissected hearts, observed the structure of their chambers, and examined the remarkable valves that directed blood through the body. Through careful observation, he recognized that these valves opened and closed with astonishing efficiency, using the movement of flowing blood itself. Centuries later, modern medical researchers would discover that many of Leonardo's conclusions had been remarkably accurate. He was seeing truths that science would only confirm hundreds of years afterward. His curiosity extended even further. Leonardo produced one of history's most famous drawings of a fetus developing inside the womb. The delicate image combines scientific precision with profound tenderness. Mother and child appear connected through a quiet harmony that reflects both biological understanding and deep human compassion. Although certain anatomical details were limited by the knowledge available in his time, the illustration remains one of the greatest achievements in early medical art. Nor did he ignore the most mysterious organ of all, the brain. Leonardo attempted to understand how human thought, memory, sensation, and movement might arise from this intricate structure hidden within the skull. He carefully sketched the brain from multiple angles, experimenting with techniques that allowed him to study its internal cavities. Although many questions remained unanswered, his willingness to investigate represented a revolutionary spirit. He believed no mystery should remain beyond the reach of careful observation. What made Leonardo's anatomical studies truly extraordinary was not simply their accuracy. It was the way he combined science and art into a single language. Every drawing was beautiful enough to hang in a gallery. Every illustration was precise enough to educate physicians. Fine lines revealed the delicate layering of muscles. Gentle shading created depth and clarity. Detailed notes surrounded each sketch, explaining movement, proportion, and function. He transformed anatomy into visual knowledge. His pages became classrooms long before modern medical textbooks existed. Ironically, almost none of this work was published during his lifetime. Thousands of pages remained hidden inside his notebooks after his death. As a result, the medical world continued advancing without the benefit of many of his astonishing discoveries. Only centuries later did scholars fully appreciate what Leonardo had accomplished. When historians compared his anatomical illustrations with modern medical knowledge, the similarities were astonishing. Many structures had been drawn with a level of precision almost unimaginable for the early 16th century. His observations had reached far beyond the limits of his age. Yet Leonardo never considered himself a physician, nor did he pursue anatomy for fame. He studied the body because he believed understanding creation was the highest form of admiration. To paint a smile, he first wished to understand every muscle that shaped it. To portray a hand, he needed to know every tendon hidden beneath the skin. To capture life on a wooden panel, he first had to understand life itself. In the silent company of the dead, Leonardo uncovered knowledge that would help generations of the living. His dissections revealed more than muscles, bones, hearts, and brains. They revealed the extraordinary power of curiosity guided by patience, discipline, and fearless observation. Long before modern medicine illuminated the mysteries of the human body, Leonardo da Vinci had already begun mapping its hidden wonders, one careful drawing, one thoughtful question, and one remarkable discovery at a time. If Leonardo da Vinci had painted only the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, history would already remember him as one of the greatest artists who ever lived. But hidden inside thousands of pages of notebooks lies another Leonardo, a man who seemed less like a painter and more like an inventor who had somehow wandered into the 15th century centuries too early. Open one of his notebooks, and you step into a world where imagination knows no limits. There are sketches of flying machines, armored vehicles, mechanical soldiers, parachutes, bridges that fold and unfold, self-moving carts, water-powered devices, machines designed to reshape both war and everyday life. Many appear astonishingly modern, some seem almost impossible. Looking through these pages today, it is easy to forget that Leonardo lived in an age when horses were still the fastest means of transportation and wind powered most machinery. Yet somehow, his mind was already racing far beyond the limits of his own century. Perhaps his most famous invention is what many people now call the aerial screw. At first glance, it resembles an enormous spiral made of linen stretched over a wooden frame. Several men standing on a platform would turn long handles, causing the giant spiral above them to rotate. Leonardo believed that if enough air could be pushed downward, the machine might lift itself into the sky. It was not a helicopter in the modern sense. It lacked an engine powerful enough to generate flight. Yet the underlying idea was extraordinary. Rather than imitating birds by flapping wings, Leonardo imagined a completely different way of rising into the air. More than 400 years later, the basic dream of vertical flight would become reality. His fascination with warfare also inspired designs unlike anything seen in Europe. Among them was a remarkable armored vehicle. The machine featured sloping protective walls surrounding soldiers inside, while numerous cannons pointed outward in every direction. Powered by men turning internal cranks, it was intended to advance across battlefields while shielding its crew from enemy attack. Modern observers immediately recognize the resemblance. It looks strikingly similar to a tank. Leonardo was never interested in destruction for its own sake. He once wrote that the most effective weapon was the one that ended conflict quickly by overwhelming an opponent. His engineering sought efficiency rather than cruelty. The sea also captured his imagination. Leonardo studied water with the same passion that he studied flight. He observed currents, whirlpools, waves, and underwater pressure, believing that humanity would one day explore the hidden world beneath the surface. His notebooks contain designs for diving equipment, including leather suits fitted with breathing tubes connected to floating devices above the water. He even imagined tools that would allow divers to remain submerged long enough to sabotage enemy ships. Although these concepts never became practical submarines, they revealed an astonishing understanding of underwater challenges centuries before modern naval engineering emerged. Then came another deceptively simple invention, the parachute. Leonardo sketched a pyramid-shaped canopy supported by a wooden frame. Beside the drawing, he confidently noted that a person using such a device could descend safely from a great height without injury. For hundreds of years, no one knew whether his idea would actually work. Then, in the early 21st century, an experimental version built according to Leonardo's original dimensions successfully carried a skydiver safely to the ground. Once again, a dream born on paper had proven remarkably sound. Perhaps Leonardo's greatest obsession, however, was flight itself. He watched birds endlessly. He filled pages with careful studies of wings, feathers, and air currents. He believed that nature had already solved the problem of flying. Humanity simply needed to understand the solution. Some of his designs attempted to imitate birds directly through mechanical wings powered by human muscles. Others explored gliding machines capable of soaring through the air. While most would have been impossible to operate successfully, the questions behind them anticipated the science of aerodynamics by centuries. Leonardo was not merely drawing fantasy, he was conducting research. Among his most surprising inventions was a self-propelled cart. Unlike ordinary wagons pulled by horses, this remarkable machine relied upon carefully wound springs and an ingenious system of gears. Once released, it could move forward on its own, and even follow a predetermined path. Today, historians often describe it as one of the world's earliest concepts for an autonomous vehicle. Some modern engineers have even reconstructed Leonardo's design, discovering that it functions remarkably well. It is astonishing to realize that the basic idea of a self-driving machine existed more than 500 years before automobiles themselves. If Leonardo's inventions were so brilliant, one obvious question remains: why were almost none of them built? The answer lies not in imagination, but in technology. Leonardo possessed ideas far beyond the capabilities of the materials available to him. The Renaissance offered wood, rope, iron, leather, and human or animal power. It did not offer lightweight metals, precision manufacturing, powerful engines, ball bearings, modern fuels, or advanced mathematics capable of predicting complex mechanical behavior. Many of his machines demanded energy sources that simply did not exist. Others required materials too heavy to fly or too weak to survive practical use. His genius had outrun the tools of his own age, yet perhaps that is precisely why modern engineers continue to admire him. When experts examine Leonardo's notebooks today, they are often struck not by the occasional mistake, but by the astonishing quality of his thinking. He approached every problem systematically. He observed nature before proposing solutions. He tested ideas through sketches. He refined mechanisms repeatedly. He viewed failure not as defeat, but as another step toward understanding. This method feels surprisingly modern. Long before engineering became a formal scientific discipline, Leonardo was already thinking like an engineer. He combined observation, experimentation, mathematics, creativity, and relentless curiosity into a single process of discovery. Many of his machines never left the page. Some could never have worked exactly as drawn. Others waited patiently for future generations to provide the missing technology. But together they revealed something far greater than a collection of inventions. They revealed a mind that refused to accept the limits of its own century. While the rest of the world struggled to solve the problems of the present, Leonardo da Vinci was quietly designing possibilities for the future. His notebooks became more than sketchbooks. They became windows into a world that had not yet been born. For Leonardo da Vinci, a city was far more than a collection of buildings. It was a living machine. Every street served a purpose. Every bridge connected more than two pieces of land. Every canal carried not only water, but commerce, health, and opportunity. If one part of the city failed, the entire system suffered. Long before engineers spoke of infrastructure or urban planning, Leonardo imagined cities as carefully designed organisms, where architecture, transportation, sanitation, and nature worked together in perfect harmony. His vision was centuries ahead of its time. One event, in particular, changed the way he thought about cities forever. During the late 15th century, outbreaks of plague continued to devastate Europe. Disease spread rapidly through crowded neighborhoods, where narrow streets trapped foul air. Waste accumulated in public spaces, and clean water was difficult to separate from contamination. To most people, plague seemed like an unavoidable tragedy. To Leonardo, it was also an engineering problem. He believed that better design could save lives. Instead of accepting filthy medieval cities as inevitable, he began sketching plans for something entirely new, an ideal city. It would be clean, orderly, efficient, healthy. Unlike the crowded streets of the time, Leonardo proposed broad avenues that allowed sunlight and fresh air to circulate freely. He believed that open spaces were not simply beautiful, they were essential to human health. Fresh water would constantly flow through carefully designed canals. Waste would be carried away before it could accumulate. The city itself would help prevent disease rather than encourage it. Perhaps his most revolutionary idea was the concept of a multi-level city. Instead of forcing every activity into the same crowded streets, Leonardo imagined separating different forms of movement onto different levels. The upper streets would belong to people. Elegant walkways would allow citizens to travel safely through bright, open spaces filled with light and fresh air. Below them, hidden from everyday life, another network would carry goods, carts, animals, and heavy supplies. Service traffic would no longer interfere with daily life. Noise would decrease. Congestion would disappear. The city would function with remarkable efficiency. Today, this idea sounds surprisingly familiar. Modern cities, separate subway systems, underground utilities, service tunnels, highways, pedestrian zones, and elevated transportation. Leonardo imagined this organization more than 5 centuries ago. His concern for sanitation extended beneath the streets. He designed sophisticated sewer systems intended to remove waste quickly and efficiently. At a time when many European cities simply emptied refuse into nearby streets or rivers, Leonardo envisioned underground drainage that protected both public health and clean water. Although he did not yet understand bacteria or viruses, he recognized that cleanliness mattered. Observation had taught him that healthier environments produced healthier communities. Water fascinated Leonardo throughout his entire life. He once described it as the driving force of nature. To him, rivers resembled the veins of the earth, carrying life wherever they flowed. If water could be understood, it could be guided, controlled, and used to improve civilization. His notebooks overflow with studies of rivers, waterfalls, currents, whirlpools, and floods. He carefully observed how water accelerated through narrow channels, slowed within wide basins, and carved valleys over countless years. He noticed that flowing water formed graceful spirals remarkably similar to curls of hair and rising smoke. Patterns repeated everywhere. Nature followed laws waiting to be discovered. Leonardo's understanding of hydraulics inspired countless practical inventions. He designed pumps capable of lifting water more efficiently than many existing systems. Some relied upon rotating screws. Others used reciprocating mechanisms driven by wheels or human power. Each sought to reduce labor while increasing productivity. For farmers, such machines promised more reliable irrigation. For cities, they offered cleaner water supplies. For industry, they created new possibilities for manufacturing. His interest in canals extended beyond transportation. Leonardo believed waterways could reshape entire economies. He proposed improving existing canals around Milan, making them deeper, straighter, and easier to navigate. Locks would allow boats to travel across changing elevations with greater safety. Goods could move more quickly between cities. Trade would flourish. Agriculture would benefit. Entire regions could become more prosperous through intelligent management of water. Many of these principles later became essential to modern civil engineering. Bridges presented another irresistible challenge. Leonardo disliked unnecessary complexity. He admired structures that achieved maximum strength using elegant simplicity. His notebooks contained designs for lightweight military bridges that soldiers could assemble rapidly during campaigns. Others featured graceful arches distributing weight with remarkable efficiency. Some could even be dismantled and transported with relative ease. Several of these bridge designs have been reconstructed by modern engineers. To their surprise, many proved entirely functional, without nails, without bolts, simply through carefully balanced geometry and the natural forces acting within the structure. Leonardo understood that the strongest design often worked with nature rather than against it. His engineering philosophy always returned to observation. He watched how tree branches divided their weight, how rivers curved around obstacles, how birds balanced themselves during flight. Nature became his greatest instructor. Rather than forcing the world to obey human ideas, Leonardo believed human ideas should first learn from the world. This approach continues to influence engineering today. Biomimicry, the practice of solving technical problems by studying nature, is now considered one of the most innovative fields of design. Leonardo was practicing it 500 years before the word even existed. Yet perhaps the most astonishing aspect of his work was not any individual invention. It was the extraordinary breadth of his vision. He never designed a bridge without considering the surrounding landscape. He never studied a canal without thinking about commerce, agriculture, and public health. He never planned a city without imagining how ordinary people would live within it every day. To Leonardo, engineering was never about machines alone. It was about improving human life. Many of his ambitious urban plans remained trapped inside notebooks. Italy's political conflicts, limited financial resources, and the technological constraints of the Renaissance prevented most of them from becoming reality. The world simply was not ready. Yet history would eventually move in the direction he imagined. Modern cities rely on underground sewer systems, separate transportation networks, flood control projects, hydraulic engineering, urban zoning, pedestrian districts. sophisticated bridges, clean water infrastructure. Many of these concepts echo ideas Leonardo had already explored centuries earlier. When modern engineers study his notebooks, they often discover not impossible fantasies, but practical solutions expressed in the language of another age. His drawings remind us that true innovation is rarely about predicting the future. It is about seeing possibilities that everyone else overlooks. While many of his contemporaries focused on solving the problems directly before them, Leonardo was quietly designing cities that belonged to another century. His bridges connected more than rivers. His canals carried more than water. His cities represented something even greater, a vision of civilization where intelligence, beauty, health, and engineering existed not as separate achievements, but as one harmonious whole. Throughout history, human beings have looked toward the sky with a mixture of wonder and longing. Birds crossed mountains with effortless grace. Eagles circled silently above valleys. Swallows danced through the air as though gravity itself had forgotten them. To generations before Leonardo da Vinci, flight belonged to the realm of myth. It belonged to angels, to legends, to dreams. But Leonardo refused to believe that the sky was forever beyond human reach. He believed nature never performed miracles. It simply followed laws that had not yet been understood. If birds could fly, then there had to be a reason, and if there was a reason, perhaps one day humanity could learn it. This simple idea became one of the greatest obsessions of his life. Whenever time allowed, Leonardo wandered into the hills and countryside surrounding Florence and Milan. He watched birds for hours without speaking. Others might have admired their beauty. Leonardo studied their mechanics. His eyes followed every movement, the gentle rise before takeoff, the subtle adjustment of feathers against the wind, the changing angle of the wings during ascent, descent, and turning, the graceful balance of the tail. He noticed details that most observers never considered. Why did large birds glide for such long distances without flapping? Why did hawks spread their wings differently from pigeons? Why could some birds remain almost motionless against the wind? What invisible force allowed them to stay aloft? He filled page after page with observations. Every feather seemed to contain another lesson. Every flight revealed another question. Leonardo did not simply sketch birds because they were beautiful. He treated them as living textbooks. Nature, he believed, had already solved the mystery of flight. His task was to understand the solution. The more closely he observed, the more he recognized that air behaved almost like water. It flowed. It resisted movement. It formed currents and invisible streams. Just as a fish moved through rivers, a bird moved through an ocean of air. This realization was astonishingly advanced for its time. Centuries before the formal science of aerodynamics emerged, Leonardo had already begun describing principles remarkably similar to those studied by modern engineers. He understood that lift depended upon movement, that balance determined stability, that the shape and angle of a wing influenced how air flowed around it. Although his explanations were limited by the scientific knowledge of the Renaissance, his questions pointed in the right direction. He was discovering the language of flight long before anyone possessed the mathematics to fully describe it. Among the many machines filling his notebooks, none captured his imagination more completely than the ornithopter. The name comes from Greek words meaning bird wing. Unlike the helicopter-like aerial screw, the ornithopter attempted to imitate nature directly. Leonardo imagined a machine with enormous wings attached to a lightweight frame. A pilot would lie at its center, operating a complex arrangement of pedals, levers, ropes, and pulleys. As arms and legs moved together, The wings would flap like those of a giant bird. Looking at the drawings today, one cannot help but admire both their beauty and their ambition. Every hinge, every joint, every cable, every supporting beam reflects hours of careful thought. Leonardo was not guessing. He was experimenting on paper. Modern engineers generally agree that the ornithopter could never have flown as Leonardo imagined. The human body simply cannot generate enough power to lift such a large machine by muscle alone. The materials available during the Renaissance were also far too heavy. Yet this does not diminish the brilliance of the design. Quite the opposite. It demonstrates how close Leonardo had come to identifying the true challenges of flight. He understood that success depended upon balancing weight, strength, motion, and airflow. These remain the fundamental problems of aviation even today. As his research continued, Leonardo gradually reached an important conclusion. Perhaps human beings should not copy every movement of birds. Perhaps they should learn the principles instead. This shift in thinking marked a remarkable intellectual leap. Nature was not a blueprint to imitate perfectly. It was a teacher. By understanding its underlying laws, humanity might eventually create entirely new forms of flight. This philosophy would later become one of the foundations of modern engineering. His notebooks contain not only drawings but thoughtful reflections on the experience of flying itself. Leonardo imagined the freedom of leaving the earth behind. He pictured mountains shrinking beneath the traveler, clouds surrounding the wings, the landscape unfolding in every direction. For a man who had spent his childhood wandering the hills of Tuscany, flight represented more than transportation. It represented liberation, the chance to see the world from a perspective no human had ever truly known. Some historians believe Leonardo even searched for suitable hillsides where experimental gliders might one day be launched. Whether such attempts were ever made remains uncertain. No reliable evidence suggests that he successfully flew any of his machines. Yet failure never discouraged him. Every unsuccessful idea simply revealed another lesson. Every obstacle inspired another sketch, another calculation, another observation. That relentless willingness to learn separated Leonardo from many inventors of his age. He did not chase impossible dreams blindly. He questioned them, refined them, tested them. Again and again, more than 400 years after Leonardo's death, the Wright brothers finally achieved powered flight. The aircraft they flew looked nothing like the ornithopter. It did not flap wings. It relied upon fixed surfaces, lightweight construction, and an engine Leonardo could never have imagined. Yet the spirit behind the achievement feels strangely familiar. Observe nature. Study carefully. Experiment patiently. Never stop asking why. These were principles Leonardo had practiced centuries earlier. Today, aerospace engineers still study birds to design quieter aircraft, more efficient wings, and agile flying robots. Scientists continue learning from eagles, owls, falcons, and albatrosses. In many ways, the conversation Leonardo began with the birds has never truly ended. Standing beneath the open sky, watching a hawk disappear into the clouds, Leonardo did not merely dream of flying, he dreamed of understanding. He believed that every mystery hidden within nature could eventually be uncovered through careful observation, relentless curiosity, and patient reasoning. The heavens were not beyond human reach because they were magical. They were beyond reach simply because humanity had not yet learned enough. And somewhere inside the pages of his weathered notebooks, between delicate sketches of feathers and elegant diagrams of wings, Leonardo left behind something even greater than a flying machine. He left behind the enduring belief that today's impossible dream can become tomorrow's ordinary reality if someone is willing to keep looking upward. To many people, beauty is something that simply exists. A breathtaking sunset, a graceful cathedral, a perfectly painted portrait. A human face that somehow feels harmonious. Most of us admire beauty without asking why it moves us so deeply. Leonardo da Vinci could never stop asking why. He believed that beauty was not an accident. It followed laws, invisible rules, hidden patterns, mathematical relationships woven quietly into every part of nature. The more carefully he observed the world, the more convinced he became that mathematics was the language through which creation itself had been written. To Leonardo, numbers were not cold abstractions. They were alive. They appeared in the branching of trees, the curves of rivers, the proportions of flowers, the movement of the planets, the human body. Everything seemed connected through geometry. Everywhere he looked, nature revealed order hidden beneath apparent chaos. This belief led Leonardo toward one of the most famous drawings in history, a simple figure standing inside both a circle and a square. Today, we know it as the Vitruvian Man. At first glance, the drawing appears almost effortless. A naked man stands with arms and legs extended, yet beneath its elegant simplicity lies an extraordinary idea. The drawing was inspired by the writings of the ancient Roman architect Vitruvius, who believed that the ideal human body followed precise mathematical proportions. Leonardo decided to test that claim. Instead of accepting ancient wisdom without question, he measured, he observed, he compared countless bodies, recording proportions with remarkable precision. How many times does the hand fit to the height of the body? How wide are the shoulders compared to the chest? Where does the navel sit in relation to the entire figure? How do the limbs relate to one another? His notebook gradually filled with measurements. Patterns began to emerge. The human body was not random. It possessed extraordinary harmony. The final drawing beautifully united two geometric forms that had fascinated philosophers for centuries. The square, a symbol of the earth, stability, human existence, and the circle, a symbol of perfection, infinity, the heavens, the universe itself. Leonardo carefully positioned the human figure so that it could fit perfectly within both shapes. The feet and hands touched the square, the outstretched limbs reached the circle, the navel became the center of the circle. The body itself became the bridge between Earth and the cosmos. It was far more than an anatomical study. It was a philosophical statement. Human beings, Leonardo believed, were reflections of the universe itself, a small world, existing within the greater world. This ancient idea was often described as the relationship between the microcosm and the macrocosm. The body mirrored creation. Its proportions echoed the hidden order governing nature. To understand ourselves was, in some way, to understand the universe. Leonardo's fascination with proportion extended beyond anatomy. Every painting he created relied upon carefully balanced geometry. Every architectural sketch reflected mathematical order. Even the placement of figures within his compositions followed invisible structures designed to guide the viewer's eye naturally across the image. Nothing was accidental. Everything had purpose. Many historians also associate Leonardo with the concept now commonly known as the golden ratio. This remarkable proportion has fascinated mathematicians, architects, and artists for centuries because it appears repeatedly throughout nature and classical design. Although modern popular culture sometimes exaggerates Leonardo's use of the golden ratio, there is little doubt that he deeply appreciated harmonious proportion and frequently explored mathematical relationships while composing his works. He understood something fundamental. Beauty often arises when balance exists, not perfect symmetry, but harmonious relationships. A face becomes beautiful not because both sides are identical. A tree becomes beautiful not because every branch matches another. Harmony grows from proportion, variation, balance. Nature rarely produces perfection, it produces elegant order. Leonardo saw geometry everywhere. He studied triangles because they created strength. He admired circles because they represented unity. He explored spirals found in shells, plants, and flowing water. He noticed repeating patterns within leaves and flowers. Long before modern science described fractals or complex natural geometry, Leonardo sensed that nature repeated similar forms across different scales. Small patterns reflected larger ones. Simple shapes combined to create astonishing complexity. This way of thinking transformed both his science and his art. When painting a face, he did not merely copy features. He searched for the underlying structure. When designing buildings, he considered proportion before decoration. When sketching machines, he balanced every moving part according to geometric relationships. Mathematics became the invisible framework supporting imagination. Yet Leonardo never viewed numbers as replacing beauty. Quite the opposite. He believed mathematics revealed why beauty existed. The artist and the mathematician, in his eyes, pursued the same truth through different paths. One measured, the other felt. One calculated, the other created. Together they uncovered the hidden order of creation. Centuries later, scientists would describe the universe through equations. Astronomers would measure planetary motion. Physicists would uncover elegant mathematical laws governing energy and matter. Biologists would discover astonishing patterns within living organisms. Many of these discoveries reflected the same conviction Leonardo had carried throughout his life. Nature is understandable. Its beauty follows order. Its mysteries invite observation rather than fear. The Vitruvian Man eventually became far more than an artistic masterpiece. It became one of the world's greatest symbols of human potential. It reminds us that knowledge does not belong to one discipline alone. Art enriches science. Science strengthens art. Geometry explains anatomy. Philosophy inspires engineering. Everything is connected. That simple figure, standing calmly inside a circle and a square, continues to represent the endless curiosity of the human mind. Perhaps that is why it remains so powerful. Leonardo was never searching only for perfect proportions. He was searching for humanity's place within the universe. He believed that every person carried within themselves the same mathematical harmony found in the stars above, the rivers below, and the endless patterns of nature. For Leonardo da Vinci, the human body was not merely flesh and bone. It was a map of creation itself, and in understanding its proportions, he believed we came one step closer to understanding the magnificent design of the universe. If every painting Leonardo da Vinci ever created had disappeared, if every sculpture had been lost, if every machine had remained only a forgotten dream, the world would still remember him through one extraordinary treasure, his notebooks. Scattered across museums and private collections today, more than 7,000 pages have survived the passing of 5 centuries. They are worn, stained by time, filled with hurried sketches, careful diagrams, mysterious symbols, and countless lines of mirror writing. Yet despite their age, opening one of these notebooks feels astonishingly modern. It is less like reading the journal of a Renaissance artist, and more like stepping inside the restless mind of someone who simply could not stop thinking. Most people keep notebooks to record important ideas. Leonardo recorded everything: a cloud drifting across the sky, the curl of a wave striking the shore, the skeleton of a horse, the shape of a leaf, the mechanism of a lock, the smile of a stranger, the geometry of a flower, the flight of an eagle. Nothing escaped his attention. Nothing seemed too ordinary to deserve study. His notebooks became companions that traveled with him wherever he went. Whether walking through crowded streets, visiting royal courts, exploring the countryside, or working late into the night, Leonardo rarely allowed an observation to disappear unrecorded. He feared forgetting more than he feared failure. An idea, once lost, might never return. So he wrote. He sketched. He questioned. Again and again. Turning the pages today reveals something remarkable. There is almost no clear beginning or ending. One page might contain an elegant drawing of the human heart. The next suddenly shifts to a design for a bridge. Below that appears a shopping list. A few lines later comes a mathematical calculation. Beside it rests the sketch of a bird's wing. Then, unexpectedly, a joke, or a reminder to purchase candles. His thoughts flowed naturally across disciplines without barriers. To Leonardo, knowledge was one continuous conversation. Perhaps the most charming discoveries hidden within these notebooks are his personal lists of things to do. Unlike ordinary reminders, Leonardo's lists often sound wonderfully strange. One note reminds him to observe the tongue of a woodpecker. Another suggests studying the movement of water after throwing stones into a pond. Elsewhere he plans to measure Milan, to investigate how the jaw of a crocodile opens, to ask a mathematician about geometry, to watch people laughing, to examine the wings of bats, to learn how bells produce sound. The lists reveal something deeply human. Even history's greatest genius worried about forgetting ideas. His curiosity overflowed faster than time allowed him to investigate. There was always another mystery waiting, another experiment to perform. Another question demanding an answer. Questions filled nearly every notebook. Some appear almost childlike in their simplicity. Yet behind each lies profound scientific insight. Why is the sky blue? Centuries before modern physics explained the scattering of sunlight through Earth's atmosphere, Leonardo carefully observed the changing colors of the heavens. He suspected that the answer depended upon light interacting with the air itself, rather than the sky possessing color of its own. His explanation was incomplete, yet remarkably thoughtful for his age. Another question appears repeatedly in different forms. Why do birds glide? This was not idle curiosity. Leonardo believed understanding birds would eventually allow humanity to fly. He observed how eagles stretched their wings without flapping. He studied changing wind currents. He compared feathers of different species. Every observation brought him closer to understanding the invisible forces acting through the air. Elsewhere, another mystery captured his imagination. How does water move? Few subjects fascinated Leonardo more. He watched rivers for hours. He dropped objects into streams simply to observe the ripples spreading outward. He examined whirlpools, waterfalls, floods, and rain. To him, water behaved almost like a living creature. It twisted, turned, accelerated, paused, separated, rejoined. He believed that understanding water would unlock countless secrets about engineering, geology, weather, and even the human body. His notebooks contain hundreds of swirling sketches showing currents flowing around rocks, through narrow channels, and over obstacles. Modern fluid dynamicists still admire the accuracy of many of these observations. Yet perhaps the most remarkable feature of Leonardo's notebooks is not any single drawing or invention. It is the questions themselves. Leonardo rarely wrote, "I know." Far more often he write, or observe, or test this. He refused to believe that authority alone could establish truth. Ancient philosophers deserved respect, but nature deserved greater trust. If observation contradicted tradition, Leonardo chose observation. This habit placed him centuries ahead of his contemporaries. Long before the scientific method received its formal name, Leonardo was already practicing its essential principles. Observe carefully, ask questions, record evidence, test ideas, revise conclusions, repeat, again and again. He accepted uncertainty with remarkable comfort. For Leonardo, not knowing was never embarrassing. It was exciting. Every unanswered question represented another doorway waiting to be opened. His notebooks reveal no final theory explaining the universe. Instead, they reveal a lifelong conversation with reality itself. Sadly, Leonardo never organized most of these pages for publication. Many remained unfinished. Others existed only as rough thoughts waiting for future development. After his death, the notebooks became scattered among students, collectors, and noble families. Some volumes disappeared forever. Others remained hidden for centuries before scholars rediscovered them. One cannot help wondering how science, engineering, anatomy, and art might have changed had all of Leonardo's notebooks been published during his lifetime. Perhaps the world would have advanced more quickly. Perhaps not. Yet their delayed discovery has given modern generations something extraordinary, a chance to witness genius in its rawest form. Not polished, not perfected, but alive. Every crossed-out sentence, every unfinished sketch, every hurried reminder, every impossible invention, every endless question. Together they reveal a mind forever in motion. Leonardo da Vinci never believed that curiosity had an endpoint. The more he learned, the larger the unknown became. His notebooks were never intended to be monuments. They were maps. Maps leading toward discoveries still waiting beyond the horizon. And perhaps that is their greatest lesson. Knowledge does not begin with answers. It begins with the courage to keep asking questions long after everyone else believes they already know them. History rarely grants the world two extraordinary geniuses at the same moment. Even more rarely does it place them in the same city. Yet that is exactly what happened in Florence at the beginning of the 16th century. Leonardo da Vinci had already become famous across Italy. His reputation as a painter, engineer, inventor, and scholar had spread from Milan to the royal courts of Europe. Then a younger artist began attracting attention. His name was Michelangelo. He was more than 20 years younger than Leonardo, but his astonishing talent was impossible to ignore. Before long, Florence found itself watching two giants walk the same streets. Each possessed unmatched brilliance. Each believed art should reveal truth, yet almost everything else about them was different. Leonardo was elegant. He dressed in fine clothing, enjoyed conversation, played music, and fascinated noblemen with stories, inventions, and scientific ideas. He moved easily through royal courts, surrounded by scholars, engineers, and patrons. His curiosity reached in every direction: painting, architecture, anatomy, mechanics, mathematics, nature. To Leonardo, every subject deserved attention. Michelangelo was almost the opposite: reserved, intense. He cared little for fashionable appearance or courtly elegance. Friends described him as a man completely consumed by his work. Where Leonardo sought harmony between many disciplines, Michelangelo devoted nearly every ounce of his energy to sculpture and monumental art. He believed greatness demanded absolute dedication. The contrast between the two men became legendary. Leonardo searched patiently for perfection. He might spend days observing light before making a single brushstroke. He revised endlessly, questioned constantly. Many of his projects remained unfinished, because every answer led to another possibility. Michelangelo worked with explosive determination. He attacked enormous blocks of marble with hammer and chisel, believing that the figure already existed inside the stone, waiting only to be released. Where Leonardo hesitated in pursuit of perfection, Michelangelo advanced with unstoppable force. One pursued endless refinement, the other embraced relentless action. Their artistic philosophies reflected these differences. Leonardo believed painting stood above all other visual arts because it captured light, atmosphere, emotion, and the subtle complexity of life itself. A painter could create entire worlds upon a flat surface. He could represent distant mountains, flowing water, changing weather, and the invisible thoughts behind a human expression. Painting, Leonardo argued, appealed directly to the intellect through observation. Michelangelo strongly disagreed. For him, sculpture represented the highest artistic achievement. A sculptor confronted physical reality itself. Nothing could be hidden. The work had to succeed from every angle. Marble demanded courage. Every strike of the chisel was permanent. There was no opportunity to paint over mistakes. The disagreement extended far beyond personal preference. It reflected two fundamentally different visions of creativity. One emphasized illusion, the other celebrated physical form. The rivalry became impossible to ignore when the government of Florence commissioned both masters to decorate the enormous council chamber inside the Palazzo Vecchio. The project promised something unprecedented. Leonardo would paint one wall, Michelangelo the opposite wall. Visitors entering the chamber would stand between the greatest artistic minds of the Renaissance. Leonardo chose to depict the Battle of Anghiari, celebrating a Florentine military victory through swirling movement, powerful horses, and intense psychological drama. Michelangelo selected the Battle of Cassina, portraying soldiers surprised while bathing before rushing courageously into combat. Each composition aimed not merely to tell history, but to demonstrate artistic superiority. Artists throughout Florence waited eagerly. Young apprentices hoped to witness a competition unlike anything Europe had ever seen. Workshops buzzed with excitement. Scholars debated whose design would prove greater. The city itself seemed to hold its breath. Ironically, neither masterpiece reached completion. Leonardo once again experimented with an unconventional painting technique. As he had done years earlier with The Last Supper, he sought richer colors and greater flexibility than traditional fresco allowed. Unfortunately, the method failed. Sections of paint deteriorated before the enormous mural could be finished. Michelangelo, meanwhile, was called away to Rome by Pope Julius II, where another commission awaited him. That project would eventually become the breathtaking ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Thus, one of history's greatest artistic competitions ended without either wall reaching its intended final form. Yet failure did not diminish its influence. Preparatory drawings made by both art artists circulated widely. Students copied them obsessively. Painters and sculptors studied every surviving detail. The unfinished works became classrooms for an entire generation. Even incomplete, they transformed Renaissance art. The rivalry between Leonardo and Michelangelo also found expression in conversation. Contemporary writers recorded moments of sharp disagreement between the two men. On one famous occasion, Michelangelo reportedly responded harshly after Leonardo made a public remark about a literary discussion. Whether every story is entirely accurate remains uncertain. Renaissance biographers often enjoy dramatic anecdotes. What is beyond doubt, however, is that mutual admiration never replaced profound artistic disagreement. Each recognized the extraordinary ability of the other. Neither wished to stand in the other's shadow. Perhaps this tension proved beneficial. Competition has long inspired human achievement. Knowing another brilliant mind was working nearby pushed both artists toward even greater ambition. Florence became more than a city. It became the world's greatest creative laboratory. Young painters flocked there hoping to learn from one master, while secretly studying the other. Ideas spread rapidly, techniques evolved, standards rose. The city entered one of the most remarkable periods in the history of Western art. Centuries later, historians continue comparing Leonardo and Michelangelo. Which was greater? The question itself may have no answer. Leonardo pursued universal knowledge. Michelangelo pursued artistic perfection. Leonardo searched for the hidden laws connecting nature. Michelangelo revealed the emotional power hidden within stone. One embodied limitless curiosity. The other embodied relentless mastery. Together, they demonstrated that genius has more than one face. Their rivalry was never simply about pride. It was about possibility. Each challenged the other directly or indirectly to reach beyond the accepted limits of human creativity. Because two extraordinary minds refused to settle for ordinary achievement, Florence became the center of the Renaissance, and the history of art was changed forever. The world did not need Leonardo to become Michelangelo, nor Michelangelo to become Leonardo. It needed both. For it is often through the meeting of contrasting visions that civilization takes its greatest steps forward. By the second decade of the 16th century, Leonardo da Vinci had spent nearly 7 decades asking questions that few others had dared to imagine. He had painted masterpieces, designed machines centuries ahead of their time, explored the mysteries of the human body, studied rivers, mountains, clouds, birds, and stars. Yet despite all he had accomplished, Leonardo remained exactly as he had been in childhood, curious, restless, always searching for one more answer. Age had slowed his body, but not his mind. Around this time, a remarkable invitation arrived from across the Alps. The young King Francis I of France had heard stories of the legendary Italian genius. Unlike many rulers who valued artists only for the paintings they produced, Francis admired Leonardo for something much greater. He saw him as the embodiment of human knowledge itself. To the young king, inviting Leonardo to France was not simply an act of prestige. It was an opportunity to surround himself with the greatest mind of the Renaissance. Leonardo accepted. Leaving behind much of the country where he had spent his life, he crossed into France and settled near the royal court. His new home was the elegant manor of Clos-Lucé, located just a short walk from the royal chateau at Amboise. The house was comfortable, peaceful, and surrounded by beautiful gardens, gentle streams, and quiet countryside. For a man who had always found inspiration in nature, it was a fitting place to spend his final years. Francis treated Leonardo with extraordinary respect. Historical accounts describe the king visiting him frequently, eager to hear his ideas about art, science, engineering, architecture, and philosophy. Their conversations reportedly lasted for hours. The elderly master no longer needed to compete for commissions or prove his brilliance. Instead, he had become something far rarer, a trusted advisor, a treasured companion, a living symbol of wisdom. The king is even said to have called Leonardo my father. Whether spoken formally or affectionately, the title reflected the immense admiration Francis felt toward the aging genius. Although Leonardo's health gradually declined, his curiosity never faded. He continued filling notebooks with observations and sketches. He refined old inventions. He considered new engineering projects for canals, palaces, and public works. He discussed architecture with royal officials. He explored ideas about mathematics, geology, and mechanics. Even when his hands no longer possessed the strength they once had, his imagination continued moving effortlessly from one question to the next. Those who expected retirement to quiet Leonardo's mind misunderstood him completely. Thinking was not merely his profession, it was his nature. Perhaps the most famous companions accompanying Leonardo on his journey to France were not people at all. They were paintings. Among them was the portrait the world would later know simply as Mona Lisa. For years, Leonardo had refused to part with it. He continued making subtle adjustments, adding delicate layers, refining shadows, and searching endlessly for perfection. The painting had become more than a commission. It had become a lifelong conversation between artist and canvas. When Leonardo left Italy, Mona Lisa traveled with him. So did several other treasured works, including Saint John the Baptist and the Virgin and Child with Saint Anne. These paintings remained close to him until the very end, almost like trusted friends accompanying an old traveler on his final journey. Looking back, it seems strangely appropriate that the world's most famous painting ended its life with Leonardo in France. Centuries later, it would remain there, eventually finding its permanent home in the Louvre Museum, where millions continue to admire it today. Life at Clos Lucé moved more slowly than the bustling workshops of Florence or Milan. There were no grand artistic rivalries, no frantic deadlines, no endless political conflicts demanding immediate solutions. Instead, Leonardo enjoyed something he had rarely possessed throughout his career: time to reflect, time to organize his thoughts, time to discuss ideas freely with those who appreciated knowledge for its own sake. Visitors described him as gentle, thoughtful, and generous in conversation. He spoke not only about painting but about astronomy, engineering, anatomy, philosophy, and the wonders of nature. Even in old age he remained a teacher, not through formal lectures, but through endless curiosity. Yet the passing years gradually reminded everyone that even the greatest minds remain human. Leonardo's health weakened. Modern historians believe he likely suffered the effects of a stroke, which reduced movement in one of his arms. For many artists, such an illness would have marked the end of creative life. For Leonardo, it simply changed the way he worked. He relied increasingly upon trusted assistants. He dictated ideas. He continued studying. His notebooks never entirely fell silent. Then, on the 2nd day of May in the year 1519, Leonardo da Vinci died at Clos Lucé at the age of 67. One of history's most extraordinary lives had come to its peaceful conclusion. A popular legend tells that King Francis I held Leonardo in his arms as he took his final breath. The image is deeply moving and has inspired countless paintings and stories over the centuries. Modern historians, however, generally believe the king was likely elsewhere at the time, and that the tale emerged later as a symbolic expression of their close relationship, rather than a literal historical event. Whether the story happened exactly as told matters less than what it represents. Europe understood that had lost someone unlike anyone before him. Leonardo left behind no great school of followers, no completed encyclopedia, no single invention that transformed the world overnight. Instead, he left something far more enduring. Thousands of pages of questions, hundreds of sketches, masterpieces that redefined art, ideas that anticipated the future, and a way of thinking that refused to accept limits. Inside the quiet rooms of Clos Lucé, the body of an old man finally came to rest, but the mind that had imagined flying machines, explored the human heart, painted unforgettable smiles, and searched endlessly for the hidden laws of nature had already begun a journey far beyond its own lifetime. 5 centuries later, the walls of that peaceful French manor still seem to whisper the same lesson Leonardo carried throughout his life: never stop wondering, for every answer is only the beginning of another question. The spring of 1519 arrived quietly in the French countryside. The gardens surrounding Clos-Lucé were once again filled with birdsong. Streams flowed gently beneath old stone bridges. Fresh leaves returned to the trees, just as they had every year before. Nature continued its endless rhythm. Yet inside the peaceful manor, one of history's greatest minds was approaching the end of its remarkable journey. Leonardo da Vinci was 67 years old. His body had grown weaker with age. The hands that had painted masterpieces, dissected the human body, designed impossible machines, and filled thousands of notebook pages no longer moved with the same strength they once possessed. But those who visited him during his final months discovered something extraordinary. His curiosity remained untouched. Even as illness limited his physical abilities, his conversations continued to wander through art, mathematics, engineering, philosophy, astronomy, and the countless mysteries of nature. To Leonardo, learning had never been a stage of life. It was life itself. On the second day of May, 1519, Leonardo da Vinci died at Clos-Lucé, near the royal residence at Amboise in France. The world had lost far more than a painter. It had lost an inventor centuries ahead of his time, a scientist before modern science existed, an engineer without modern technology, an anatomist whose discoveries would astonish physicians generations later, a philosopher who believed that observation mattered more than assumption, and above all, a man who never stopped asking questions. Almost immediately, stories began surrounding his final moments. The most famous legend tells of King Francis I rushing to Leonardo's bedside and gently holding the old master's head in his arms as he breathed his last. It is a beautiful image. A young king paying tribute to the greatest genius of his age. For centuries, artists celebrated the scene in paintings, presenting it as the perfect ending to an extraordinary life. Modern historians, however, have examined the historical record carefully. Most believe the king was likely away from Amboise on official duties when Leonardo died, making the famous story unlikely to have happened exactly as tradition describes. Yet legends often survive not because every detail is true, but because they express a deeper truth. Whether or not Francis was physically present, there is little doubt that he admired Leonardo profoundly. The legend reflects the respect an entire generation felt toward the aging master. Leonardo was buried in the chapel of the Château d'Amboise. Over the centuries, wars, political upheaval, and the passage of time complicated the exact history of his burial place. Today, visitors continue to honor his memory at the Château, where a tomb traditionally associated with Leonardo stands as a symbol of his extraordinary life. Yet perhaps it is fitting that uncertainty surrounds even his final resting place. Leonardo spent his life pursuing mysteries. In death, the small mystery remained his own. Unlike many famous artists, Leonardo left surprisingly few completed paintings. Only around 15 to 20 works are generally accepted as entirely or substantially his. He left no published scientific encyclopedia. Many inventions remained only as sketches. Many research projects remained unfinished. Many discoveries stayed hidden inside notebooks for centuries. By ordinary standards, his career might almost seem incomplete. And yet, few human beings have influenced civilization more profoundly. Why? Because Leonardo changed the way people think. He showed that art and science are not rivals, but partners. That imagination becomes most powerful when guided by careful observation. That curiosity should never be limited to a single subject. He demonstrated that a painter could also become an engineer. That an inventor could study anatomy. That mathematics could explain beauty. That nature itself was the greatest teacher. Centuries after his death, Scientists rediscovered the astonishing accuracy of his anatomical drawings. Engineers admired machines conceived long before engines existed. Artists studied his mastery of light, shadow, and emotion. Architects examined his elegant designs. Even psychologists found inspiration in his endless habit of questioning everything around him. Few individuals have touched so many different fields with equal brilliance. Today, Leonardo's face is recognized across the world. His notebooks are preserved like priceless treasures. His paintings attract millions of visitors every year. His ideas continue inspiring engineers, doctors, artists, designers, architects, and dreamers. Entire generations still open his pages searching for wisdom, not because he possessed every answer, but because he taught humanity how to search for them. Perhaps that is why Leonardo da Vinci has never been forgotten. Masterpieces may fade, buildings may crumble, machines eventually become obsolete, even civilizations rise and fall, but curiosity endures. Every child who wonders why the sky is blue, every scientist searching for an unknown discovery, every artist trying to capture beauty, every engineer imagining tomorrow's impossible invention, walks, in some small way, along a path Leonardo helped create. His greatest masterpiece was never a painting hanging on a wall. It was a way of seeing the world. A belief that every mystery invites exploration, every observation holds meaning, and every generation can move humanity forward by daring to ask one more question. That is why, more than 5 centuries after his final breath, Leonardo da Vinci remains not only a legend of the Renaissance, but one of the greatest symbols of human potential the world has ever known. History remembers Leonardo da Vinci through a handful of extraordinary masterpieces: the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, the Vitruvian Man, a few remarkable paintings, thousands of notebook pages. Yet these surviving treasures tell only part of the story. They are like scattered stars remaining after an entire constellation has disappeared. For every masterpiece we can still admire today, there are others that have vanished forever. For every completed painting, there are unfinished commissions. For every invention carefully preserved in his notebooks, there are dreams that never advanced beyond a sketch. Leonardo's greatest legacy is not only what he completed, it is also what the world lost. Unlike many artists who worked quickly to satisfy patrons, Leonardo approached every project with endless patience. He questioned every decision, adjusted every composition, reconsidered every detail. He rarely believed that perfection had truly been achieved. This relentless pursuit of excellence produced extraordinary results. It also meant that many commissions remained unfinished for years or forever. His patrons sometimes grew frustrated. Princes waited, monks waited, merchants waited, kings waited. Leonardo continued searching for improvements. To him, a masterpiece was not something to finish quickly. It was something to understand completely. One of the greatest losses in Renaissance art is the mural known as the Battle of Anghiari. Commissioned for the Great Council Chamber of Florence's Palazzo Vecchio, the enormous painting was intended to celebrate a famous military victory. Leonardo poured immense energy into the project. His preparatory drawings revealed charging horses, determined soldiers, twisting bodies, and astonishing emotional intensity. Those who saw the unfinished work described it with admiration. Young artists traveled simply to study its powerful composition. Yet once again, Leonardo experimented with an unconventional painting technique instead of traditional fresco. The pigments failed to bond properly with the wall. Sections began to deteriorate almost immediately. Eventually, later renovations covered what remained. Whether fragments still survive hidden beneath newer layers remains one of art history's most fascinating mysteries. Researchers have searched for decades, hoping that traces of Leonardo's lost masterpiece might still exist behind the walls. The answer remains uncertain. Another dream of truly monumental scale stood not upon a wall, but in bronze. When Leonardo entered the service of Duke Ludovico Sforza in Milan, he received an extraordinary commission. He was asked to create the largest equestrian statue Europe had ever seen. The sculpture would honor the Duke's father, Francesco Sforza. Leonardo devoted years to the project. He studied horses endlessly. He filled notebook after notebook with anatomical sketches. He examined muscles beneath the skin, the mechanics of movement, and the balance required for such a massive structure. Eventually, he produced an enormous full-size clay model. Contemporaries reportedly considered it one of the greatest sculptural achievements ever created. The finished bronze monument would have stood nearly 24 feet tall. Nothing comparable had been attempted since antiquity, but history intervened. War swept across northern Italy. The vast quantity of bronze reserved for casting the statue was melted down to manufacture cannons instead. The giant clay horse remained standing for a short time before invading soldiers reportedly used it for target practice. Arrows shattered what years of patient labor had created. The masterpiece disappeared before it could ever become reality. Today, only Leonardo's sketches and written plans preserve the dream. It is a powerful reminder that history can erase even the greatest ambitions. Painting, sculpture, engineering, and architecture all shared a similar fate in Leonardo's career. Many projects remain suspended between imagination and completion. Royal palaces, ideal cities, canal systems, churches, fortifications, mechanical theaters, scientific treatises. Some progressed only as detailed plans. Others reached partial construction before political change halted the work. Leonardo's notebooks reveal countless inventions that never left the page. Flying machines awaited engines powerful enough to lift them. Armored vehicles required stronger materials and more efficient mechanisms. Hydraulic systems demanded manufacturing precision unavailable during the Renaissance. Mechanical devices depended upon technologies that would not appear for centuries. His ideas often exceeded the capabilities of his age. It was not imagination that failed. It was history's timetable. Sometimes Leonardo himself became the greatest obstacle. His curiosity continually pulled him toward new discoveries. While working on one commission, another fascinating question would emerge. A study of anatomy inspired investigations into mechanics. Mechanical research led to mathematics. Mathematics opened new questions about architecture. Architecture suggested ideas about water. Water led back to geology. Everything connected. Nothing existed in isolation. This extraordinary breadth made Leonardo unique. It also made completion difficult. He was not content to solve one problem while ignoring 10 others. His mind refused to remain within boundaries. Modern readers often mistake unfinished projects for failure. Leonardo almost certainly would not have agreed. To him, exploration possessed value independent of completion. Every experiment revealed knowledge. Every sketch clarified understanding. Every unsuccessful attempt opened another path toward truth. His notebooks demonstrate that discovery is rarely a straight line. Progress emerges through constant revision, observation, and imagination. Centuries later, engineers have reconstructed many of Leonardo's unfinished machines. Architects have modeled his buildings. Artists have recreated missing compositions from surviving sketches. Even the colossal Sforza horse finally found new life. Inspired by Leonardo's original drawings, Modern sculptors eventually produced monumental bronze horses honoring his vision, allowing the world to glimpse what Renaissance Italy never had the chance to see. Yet no reconstruction can fully replace the originals. Some masterpieces belong only to history. Perhaps there is something strangely beautiful about that. Leonardo's unfinished works remind us that genius is not measured solely by completed achievements. Sometimes its greatest power lies in the possibilities it leaves behind. Every unfinished drawing invites another imagination. Every lost sculpture inspires another artist. Every unrealized invention challenges another engineer. His dreams did not end because they remained incomplete. They continued through those willing to carry them forward. In the end, Leonardo da Vinci did not leave behind a perfect collection of finished masterpieces. He left something far more enduring, a universe of ideas, some realized, some forgotten, some still waiting, and perhaps somewhere among the pages of his surviving notebooks, there remain dreams that humanity has not yet learned how to build. 5 centuries have passed since Leonardo da Vinci closed his notebooks for the final time. Kingdoms have disappeared, empires have risen and fallen, new continents have been explored. Steam engines, electricity, automobiles, airplanes, computers and spacecraft have transformed civilization beyond anything imaginable during the Renaissance. Yet through every generation, one name has continued to shine with remarkable consistency: Leonardo da Vinci. Not because he built the tallest monument, not because he ruled a vast empire, not because he led great armies into battle, but because he changed the way humanity thinks. His influence cannot be measured by a single invention or a single masterpiece. Instead, it stretches across countless fields, quietly shaping the modern world in ways even Leonardo himself could never have imagined. His first and perhaps most visible legacy remains painting. Before Leonardo, many portraits appeared formal and rigid. Faces often lacked psychological depth. Backgrounds served merely as decoration. Leonardo transformed portraiture into something profoundly human. Through delicate light, subtle shadow, and the revolutionary technique of sfumato, he created figures that seemed to breathe. Expressions became complex rather than obvious. A smile could suggest joy, mystery, sadness, and wisdom all at once. Artists across Europe studied his methods. Generations later, painters from Raphael to Rembrandt and countless others after them continued learning from the visual language Leonardo had pioneered. His influence did not stop with art. Inside hospitals and universities, another side of Leonardo quietly emerged. His anatomical drawings remain among the greatest scientific illustrations ever produced. Long before photography or modern medical imaging, Leonardo recorded muscles, bones, tendons, organs, and the human heart with astonishing precision. Today, physicians still admire the accuracy of his observations. Medical students often encounter his work not simply as historical curiosity, but as evidence of extraordinary scientific discipline. He demonstrated that careful observation could reveal truths hidden beneath accepted tradition. Engineering tells a similar story. Leonardo imagined bridges that balanced strength with elegance. He designed machines that anticipated future technologies. He explored gears, pulleys, bearings, hydraulic systems, flying machines, armored vehicles, and self-propelled mechanisms. Many concepts remained impossible during his lifetime because the necessary materials and engines did not yet exist. Yet when modern engineers examine his notebooks, they often recognize ideas surprisingly familiar to contemporary design. More importantly, they recognize his method: observe nature, define the problem, sketch possible solutions, test repeatedly, improve constantly. This process remains at the heart of engineering today. Architecture also bears Leonardo's fingerprints. His vision of clean, organized cities anticipated urban planning centuries before modern infrastructure emerged. He understood that beauty alone could not sustain civilization. Cities required healthy sanitation, efficient transportation, reliable water systems, functional public spaces. His proposals for multi-level streets, underground drainage, and integrated canals reflected an understanding that architecture should improve daily life, rather than simply impress the eye. Modern city planners continue pursuing many of the same ideals. Science perhaps owes Leonardo an even deeper debt. Although he never published a comprehensive scientific theory, his habits embodied the spirit that would later define modern research. He questioned authority. He trusted observation. He welcomed uncertainty. He revised conclusions whenever new evidence appeared, rather than accepting ancient beliefs simply because they were ancient. Leonardo believed nature itself should become humanity's greatest teacher. This approach helped lay the philosophical foundation for the scientific revolution that followed. In many ways, Leonardo thought like a scientist before science became an organized discipline. Design, too, reflects his extraordinary vision. Today we often celebrate products that combine beauty with function. A chair should be comfortable as well as elegant. A bridge should be efficient as well as inspiring. Technology should solve problems without sacrificing aesthetics. Leonardo understood this balance instinctively. For him, engineering and art were never separate pursuits. Every machine possessed visual harmony. Every painting reflected structural precision. Every invention sought both usefulness and beauty. Modern industrial designers continue embracing the same philosophy. Perhaps Leonardo's greatest contribution, however, cannot be found in museums or laboratories. It lives inside the human imagination. Every generation discovers something different within his life. Artists admire his creativity. Scientists admire his curiosity. Doctors admire his anatomical studies. Engineers admire his inventions. Architects admire his vision. Students admire his relentless desire to learn. He belongs to no single profession because he refused to limit himself to one. This is why Leonardo is often called the universal genius. Not because he knew everything. No human being ever could, but because he believed every field of knowledge was connected. Painting illuminated anatomy. Anatomy improved sculpture. Geometry strengthened architecture. Nature inspired engineering. Mathematics revealed beauty. Each discovery opened the door to another. His life reminds us that true innovation often appears where different disciplines meet. Today, millions of people continue visiting the Louvre to glimpse Mona Lisa. Researchers continue studying his notebooks. Engineers build models of his inventions. Teachers tell his story in classrooms around the world. Documentaries, books, exhibitions, and films continue exploring his remarkable mind. Few individuals remain so alive in public imagination after more than 500 years. Perhaps the reason is simple. Leonardo da Vinci did not merely leave behind answers. He left behind permission. Permission to remain curious. Permission to cross boundaries. Permission to ask impossible questions. Permission to believe that art and science belong together. And permission to spend a lifetime learning, without ever believing the journey is complete. That may be Leonardo's greatest masterpiece, not a painting hanging on a museum wall, but an idea that continues to inspire humanity. The idea that the limits of knowledge are never fixed. They expand every time one curious mind dares to look beyond the horizon. There have been countless brilliant people throughout history. Great kings built empires. Remarkable scientists uncovered the laws of nature. Visionary artists transformed the way we see beauty. Inventors changed the course of civilization with a single revolutionary idea. Yet very few individuals seem to stand outside the boundaries of time itself. Leonardo da Vinci is one of them. More than 500 years after his death, his name continues to inspire a sense of wonder, unlike almost anyone else in history. Children learn about him in school. Scientists study his notebooks. Artists admire his masterpieces. Engineers analyze his inventions. Doctors marvel at his anatomical drawings. Historians continue debating the mysteries of his life. The fascination never seems to fade. Why? What makes Leonardo different from every other genius? Part of the answer lies in the extraordinary range of his interests. Most remarkable people devote their lives to mastering one discipline. A composer writes music. A mathematician studies numbers. An architect designs buildings. A physician heals the sick. Leonardo refused to accept such boundaries. He believed knowledge was a single, interconnected landscape. To understand painting, he studied anatomy. To understand anatomy, he examined mechanics. To understand mechanics, he observed birds. To understand birds, he explored air. To understand air, he investigated water. Every question naturally led to another. His curiosity never moved in straight lines. It expanded outward like ripples spreading across the surface of a quiet lake. Perhaps that endless curiosity was his greatest gift. Leonardo never lost the ability to look at ordinary things with extraordinary attention. A smile, a raindrop, a leaf floating downstream, the shadow cast by afternoon sunlight. Most people would simply notice these moments and continue walking. Leonardo stopped. He observed. He asked why. Again and again. He once wrote that learning never exhausts the mind. Those words remain as powerful today as they were during the Renaissance. For Leonardo, education did not end with youth. It did not end after becoming famous. It did not end after creating masterpieces admired across Europe. He remained a student until his final days. Even in old age, while living peacefully at Clos-Lucé, he continued filling notebooks with fresh ideas, unanswered questions, and new observations. His greatest achievement may not have been what he knew. It may have been his willingness to admit how much remained unknown. Another reason Leonardo continues to fascinate us is that parts of his life remain wrapped in mystery. Historians still debate aspects of his work. Exactly how did he produce the astonishing softness of sfumato? Did hidden meanings exist within certain paintings, or have later generations imagined symbols that were never intended? Were some of his inventions practical prototypes, or simply thought experiments designed to explore possibilities? How many notebooks have disappeared forever? What discoveries vanished with them? Even Mona Lisa continues to raise questions. Why did Leonardo carry the portrait with him for so many years? Did he ever truly consider it finished? Or was it simply another lifelong experiment in understanding light, emotion, and human perception? These unanswered questions keep Leonardo wonderfully alive. Every generation returns to his work hoping to uncover something new. Modern technology has only deepened that search. Scientists use infrared imaging to reveal hidden sketches beneath paintings. Engineers reconstruct machines from faded notebook pages. Medical researchers compare his anatomical drawings with contemporary knowledge. Digital historians piece together scattered manuscripts that were separated centuries ago. Remarkably, Leonardo continues teaching us through technologies he could never have imagined. Perhaps no title describes him more perfectly than the phrase, Renaissance man. Today the expression refers to someone with wide-ranging knowledge, exceptional creativity, and the ability to excel across many different fields. The phrase exists because Leonardo gave it meaning. He became the living example of what human potential might be like when curiosity is allowed to grow without limits. Yet perhaps even this famous title does not fully capture who he was. Leonardo did not pursue many disciplines simply to impress others. He was not collecting knowledge like trophies. He genuinely believed that everything in nature belonged to one magnificent design. Art explained science. Science enriched art. Mathematics revealed beauty. Nature inspired engineering. Observation strengthened imagination. Everything connected. Everything mattered. Looking back across his life, one realization becomes impossible to ignore. Leonardo did not truly belong only to the 15th century. Many of his ideas anticipated discoveries centuries later. His machines resembled technologies that would not appear until the Industrial Revolution and beyond. His scientific thinking foreshadowed the modern method of observation and experimentation. His vision of interdisciplinary learning mirrors the way today's greatest innovators solve complex problems by combining art, engineering, medicine, technology, and design. In many respects, Leonardo belonged not only to the Renaissance, but to the future. And perhaps that is why his story continues to resonate so deeply. The world changes constantly. New inventions appear every year. Knowledge expands faster than ever before. Yet the qualities that made Leonardo extraordinary remain timeless. Curiosity, humility, patience, careful observation, the courage to ask difficult questions, and the willingness to spend an entire lifetime learning. 5 centuries have passed since Leonardo da Vinci laid down his pen for the final time, but his greatest lesson has never grown old. Human potential is not measured by what we already know. It is measured by our desire to keep discovering what we have yet to understand. That is why Leonardo da Vinci continues to fascinate us. Not simply because he painted the world's most famous portrait, not because he imagined machines centuries ahead of his time, but because he reminds every generation that the greatest adventure is not reaching the end of knowledge, it is never losing the curiosity to begin the journey again. As the sun slowly sets over the gentle hills of Vinci, the golden light stretches across vineyards, ancient stone houses, and the quiet parts where a curious young boy once wandered more than 5 centuries ago. The camera glides softly through the peaceful streets before entering a dimly lit Renaissance workshop. Sheets of paper lie scattered across an old wooden table. We catch glimpses of delicate sketches of flying machines, intricate studies of the human heart, elegant geometric drawings, and pages filled with endless questions written in Leonardo's unmistakable mirror script. Finally, the camera lingers on the quiet smile of the Mona Lisa. It is a painting the world has admired for centuries, yet it represents only a small part of the remarkable legacy Leonardo da Vinci left behind. He did not simply create masterpieces that changed the history of art. He changed the way humanity thinks. He taught us that imagination and observation belong together, that science and creativity are not separate paths, but companions on the same journey, that every answer begins with the courage to ask another question. Many of Leonardo's ideas seemed impossible during his lifetime. His dreams of flying machines, advanced engineering, modern cities, scientific anatomy, and mechanical inventions all waited patiently for future generations to make them real. In many ways, Leonardo was not a man ahead of his time. He was a man whose time had not yet arrived. Perhaps that is why his story continues to inspire us today. Because curiosity never grows old. Because creativity has no expiration date. And because every generation still has its own impossible dreams, waiting to become tomorrow's reality. So before we leave Vinci behind, let us end with one final thought. If Leonardo da Vinci were alive today, what would he invent next? Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of one of history's greatest minds. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Chill and Feel Chronicles, and share it with someone who loves history, art, and the endless wonders of human imagination. Until our next adventure, wherever you are in the world, may your curiosity continue to grow, your mind remain open, and your dreams reach a little farther than they did yesterday. Good night, and we'll see you in the next chapter of Chill and Feel Chronicles.